Hey, Chris, thanks so much for being here, man. I really appreciate your time. I know it's very valuable, so we'll jump right in. Would you mind just giving a brief description of what you do and who you are, where you come from?
Sure. Let me let this helicopter go by. I don't know if you can hear that.
Oh, yeah. I can't, actually.
Oh, you can't? Wow. Okay, this is a good mic.
Oh, there you go.
It's almost about to pass.
Okay.
There we go. Yeah, my name is Chris Do. I'm a loud introvert, and I have a really big mission, which is to teach 1 billion people how to make a living doing what they love. And what that means is I've been the beneficiary of a country who's welcomed my family and I, because we're refugees from Vietnam. And I've been able to achieve and do things that exceed my imagination. And so now I'm at that place where I believe in this, like when you achieve a level of success, you need to send the elevator back down. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Awesome. Well, that's probably why you're here right now, chatting with me and a few other my friends that listen to the podcast. So I appreciate it. Now, my first question, and I did see that was your goal on the Futures website to teach 1 billion people. Are there 1 billion people interested in advertising or the creative industry?
I don't think so.
13% of the population of the world. So how are you going to achieve that?
Well, there's a couple different ways. I'm not interested in just teaching design or marketing or content creation. I'm talking, I guess, well, my mission is actually, my purpose is a little bit bigger than that, which is about disrupting and evolving or changing education. And I think it's been a model that's been fairly efficient at doing what it's done. It built for a different industrial age. And now we're living in the information or the creative age, and we need different ways of learning. And we look at the inequities that exist in terms of just access alone. So if you're from a poor community, or if your parents don't have the means to hire the best teachers, tutors, and get you in the best schools, then your opportunities to get into the elite schools and universities in this country are fairly limited. And I can see it because my son goes to an elite high school, and there's all kinds of people already recruiting him, and he's a junior in high school. It's a vast difference between that and my public high school education. And so to me, it's no wonder that some of the very most powerful and wealthy people in the world tend to go to similar schools to each other. And there's something that's happening here. So what we need to do is we need to be able to reset the table and say, education should be a right and not a privilege. Like, we shall all have access to the best education. That way we have an equal shot at getting some part of that pie, that American dream. And so I think we can leverage digital tools, new innovative ways of teaching. We can spend the amount of money that we need to make a really high quality class and experience, a learning experience for someone, and do it at a price that's affordable for not just people in America, but for people all over the world. And so if I'm able to do that, then I'll create the platform or the best practices, or I'll contribute to someone else doing it, that then the ripple effect will happen. The only way we can teach 1 billion people is to teach teachers how to teach and make it equitable for them to participate in this.
Right. Now, did you have access to a good education?
No, I don't think so. I mean,
you don't think so?
No, I went to, I lived in a middle to upper middle class neighborhood all my life, went to public school. I didn't really feel engaged in public high school. There's a handful of teachers throughout my education that have made a difference in my life. I cherish them in my mind for the rest of my life. And then I'm like in community college now, trying to figure out my life, and I don't know where to go because my grades aren't good enough. I can't get into the schools I applied to. And eventually I find my way into graphic design and apply to get to ArtCenter. Now, ArtCenter is a great school. That's how I know your father.
Right. Yeah.
And that changed my life. And so again, it's very clear to me what can happen when you're in the right place and you have access. But then you look around, and I remember this experience very vividly in my mind. Relatively speaking, I was one of the poorer students. I'm not poor. I'm not saying my parents are poor, but relative to my classmates who were driving fancy European cars, going on trips and dressed a certain way, like falling out of a J. Crew catalog or whatever. I was thinking, man, I just want to make it through this semester. My parents made enough to get me in, and then the rest is just financed by MasterCard and Visa.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So what makes you qualified then to teach 1 billion people? Or to build a platform? Yeah. Okay. Awesome. I think that's actually where I'm going. And so what are you doing to make sure that this is beneficial for everyone, and not just Americans, but everyone in the world?
Yeah. So I think the problem with universities and well-established organizations is they just move at a Jurassic pace. They just move so slow. They know the change is here. And we can see this in the last year, this pandemic, COVID hit, and schools are scrambling for the very first time. They thought, what would life be like if we couldn't see each other? And many of them are hemorrhaging money because as it turns out, I've done some research on this. One university is like losing $100 million just that year alone in lost revenue. And what we find out is, and I think if you just take a step back and objectively look at it, many universities are in the business of loaning people money. The education is just the bait that they bring you in. So schools,
secondary.
Yeah, it's secondary to it all. And they basically help you through the structure, through the government, apply for a loan that you may or may not be able to pay off for the rest of your life. It's a ridiculous system that we have. And then there's corporate money that's involved. There's events and promotions. So, and just even like parking and housing, they make so much money. So it seems like to me, it's not an education model, it's a profit model that happens to sell in the space of education. So I'm not qualified to do this at all. I mean, I've been a teacher for 15 years, but I see the changes around us. And what I'm doing is I'm just prototyping. I'm trying things. But I have a bold hypothesis, which is, why do we need to teach the same class over and over again by less than superstar teachers? Why not just recruit the best, sharpest, most charismatic, most engaging teachers to teach a class like chemistry or graphic design or lettering? Why don't we just work for 6 months like the way that they would develop a script for a TV show, produce the heck out of it, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and have something that you can say, this is the definitive piece on this, and then open that up to the world. So to me, the model is really messed up. And then the second, third tier teachers who aren't that great can be wonderful TAs to these virtual experiences, right? Because we still need to talk to humans, and they can work more as facilitators and ask the questions in a Socratic approach so that people can learn. Very different.
Was this something that you, going into graphic design, kind of knew or had a plan for? Or was there a path to where you are now? Did you try other things? Did you try being a freelance graphic designer at first? Talk to me about some of the beginnings and how you got started.
Yeah, so education was very far away from my mind at that point. I'm like every kid that gets out of school, what am I going to do with my life now? Now I have to be an adult and be responsible. I got loans to pay off. I have to make sure that this money my parents invested is not just totally just money in the wind. And so I got to do what I got to do. I got to get work. And so I worked at a couple of places, didn't work for me. It turns out I'm not a good employee. I'm not hireable, or I'm unemployable, I guess. And then I start freelancing, and this is pretty cool. And I'm starting to get a taste for this, and it feels like I'm one step away from starting my business. So I just take the plunge. I graduated in the summer of 1995. I started my company in December of 1995. I'm just telling you that because I'm not a patient person. I just want to go for it. And the rationale in my mind was, if I don't do this now, I will never be able to do this. I got to just go for it. And this is the moment, because I'm young and I can afford to lose things.
Yeah, absolutely. What was the company that you started?
It was called Blind.
Yeah, talk to me. Yeah, what does Blind do?
Yeah, so Blind is a service design company. It went through many iterations and evolutions, but ultimately we're a design, production, and post-production company. We make commercials, mostly is how we make our money, and we make music videos to feed our creative soul. But we made commercials for 20 plus years for really big brands.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. And that's, so you're making like television spots? Are they animated? Are they kind of integrated with live action, or is it mostly just animation?
Yes. There are 30-second commercials that you would see back when we watched commercials on TV. You remember that? So that's what we used to do. And it started out as being purely typographic, and it evolved into full live action with visual effects. And it's just like those iterations, like every 3 or 4 years, we have to decide, like, do we want to evolve to the next level? And we would. And ultimately it led to the point in which sometimes we would shoot mostly live action and barely have any design in it.
So how did you know where did you reach out to people? That's like, I'm assuming you're doing, commercials for big, 30-second spots. You got probably car commercials, fast food, some of these big companies. What gave you the know-how to reach out to them? How did you have that first big break? Talk to me about some of those things.
Yeah, it's Lars, it's a situation of timing, right place in front of the right people and the right moment in the industry. When I decided to do motion design, the word motion design hadn't yet been coined. So we're pretty early in it. and I'm at ArtCenter. I take an After Effects class, and it's owned by Cosa before it was sold to Adobe.
Yeah.
So our work gets on this disk, the CD-ROM of work, student work, basically examples. And that was my calling card. I didn't know it at the time, but this is very fortuitous that my work gets selected, it gets printed on the disk, and then it goes out. And I just happened to be in Los Angeles, the heart of the entertainment capital of the world. And there are companies here within minutes or miles away from where I was living at that time. And they reached out to me like, hey, I saw your work. I'd like to talk to you. And that person I still know to this day. So 25 years later, his name is Gary. I still talk to Gary, and he was one of my first clients. And he ran a production company. He's shooting live action. Now, I have no experience. When I say no, it's like I don't know square from non-square pixels. I don't know anything. I barely know what I'm doing. And I tell people this because I just want to keep it real.
Yeah.
I wound up animating the titles to Eraser, the film with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Incredible.
And I had designed the storyboards. The company I was working for on a freelance basis was called RGA LA, and then later on became Imaginary Forces. They pick the board, they get the job, and then now I'm full-blown animation mode. And I'm animating titles in 2K, which I barely even know what I'm doing. Each frame takes over an hour to render. So, okay, an hour to render, 24 frames times 22 titles, and the deadline is so tight. So they paid for another animator from their company to come over to sit with me to look at the files. And I'm embarrassed, but this is just real. He looks at the animation. He's like, Chris, did you know you can curve the animation? And if we do this, it'll feel a lot smoother and nicer. I never adjusted curves in my life before. And if you've done animation, you're like rolling your eyes right now.
Of course.
Because it was a linear animation. It would start and stop at the same speed. But once you went in there, like, oh my God, easy. Oh, this is like revolutionary. And I know what he's thinking. He's thinking, how the hell did they hire this kid? And he's doing my job. And they paid him to come and look at the animation. So once that was set up, you would duplicate it. And then I would typeset all the titles, send them off to be approved. They're all approved. And I'm rendering these things out. And I'm sitting there babysitting every one of these machines. I had to rent a couple of machines. And one of them was, I think it was called Daystar Genesis. It was a multi-tower. It was enormous. This thing was like 3 feet tall. And I don't exaggerate. It's enormous. Just go look it up. Okay. And I'm just sitting there like, I would literally walk by each monitor. Like, okay, you're still rendering. You're still rendering. Okay. Because they would crash. These were unstable things that we were doing. So right place, right time means that there are opportunities for the dumb and foolish. And I fit both in the inexperienced, and I fit all those categories. How
did you know what to charge them? And did you undercharge?
You never really know what to charge, to be honest.
Sure. Yeah.
Even to this day. And I just remember I would like, here's my day rate, and they approved it. I'm like, I'll ask for more next time. And from the first moment I worked with them, and we're talking about like a 6-month time span, it's not like a lot of time. I went from charging like $300 a day to like $800 a day. And they just kept approving it. So I was trying to find what the limit was. And I found the limit because eventually a producer called me and said, I just got your invoice and you just keep changing your price. And I'm like, I understand. I said, is there a problem, a complaint about the work and the value? She goes, no. I said, okay. And that was that.
Yeah. So was that the limit? I'm curious.
No, it was not the limit.
Okay. Yeah.
You can just keep going. But there is a limit to how much you can charge when you're doing outsourced work. So they, as the production company, we're working with a client, they need to make money. So whoever has the closest relationship or proximity to the client makes the lion's share of the money. And everybody needs to know that.
Yeah. Explain that in different context.
Okay. So let's say you're Sony and you hire an ad agency. And then ad agency hires a production company that does the live action. The live action company hires a motion design firm. And the motion design firm hires animators. An animator hires like someone else. Like it just keeps the farther.
So the animators can't be the most expensive part of that equation.
They're not going to make the most money, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
So whoever is closest to the client, in this case, the ad agency, they will make the lion's share. If there were $100, they'd probably make $78 out of the $100. 30 would go into production, and then 5 would go into the motion design studio, and 50 cents or 10 cents would go to the animator. It's usually how it works.
So how have you been able to get as close to the top as you possibly can be? And are you?
Yeah. The ideal thing, and I think about this all the time, right? So I'm like, well, if Nissan hires Shia Day to do their advertising, You could aspire to be Day. It'd be better just to be Nissan. I mean, that's how I think. Is my my little brain's like, why don't you just become Nissan? Okay, so kid, like, what? How are you going to do that? Well, you go through a process. So the first process is, can I replace what the agency is doing? Well, they have marketing strategists, they have media buyers, they have all kinds of people who know very specific things to generate an effective marketing campaign. And so it takes me over 15 years to learn, like, oh, I think I can do this. This is what they do. So for that entire first 15 years, it was just working for them. And this is what people refer to as client direct work or direct to client. So we're going to become the agency, but you have to acquire the skills the agency has. You can't just be a production company. You can't just be designers. It doesn't work like that. And then eventually you do that. And that's what we did. We started working with clients direct. So they'd come to us and they were less sophisticated buyers of media and art and design. You'd have to do their strategy for them. You'd have to figure out their tone and voice and write their copy. And then somewhere down the line, you actually make the video. And all this stuff you charge for, by the way.
Yeah, of course.
Thinking.
Yeah, no, did you have to hire out different people to help you with that copy, to help you with that creative, or was that something that you just figured out on your own and with trial and error managed to do it?
It is very difficult to figure these things out on your own. You need training and you need professional experience. Now, luckily, if you've been working in the industry for 15 years and you've not burned too many bridges, you'll know someone who knows someone. Yeah. And so eventually you find that person and then they either charge you, consult, and they teach you, you pay them, something like that happens, and you start to learn it and it becomes part of your core competency. So when it came to doing the strategic part for the brand, I learned how to do it. I practiced it and I did it. And you throw yourself into the fire and you learn, you firewalk, and then you do it. And like, okay, but I'm not a copywriter. That's not something I can just pick up a book and start writing copy. So you tap into all your friends that used to work in advertising and then they write copy for you. And it's like, oh, that sounds about right. Okay. Yeah.
Talk to me about, obviously you're doing motion graphics back in 95, 96 when Adobe hadn't even acquired After Effects yet. This is way before I even came to the picture. I'm sure that your business model has evolved and actually had to pivot a few times along the way. 90s was the golden age of advertising where, McDonald's would come to people with $2 million and that was that. And now maybe that's a tenth of the cost of what they had.
I was there, by the way.
Yeah, right. So now they're coming to people with $200,000 and they're still getting the work done. Yep. How have you had to pivot, and talk to me about some of the safe guards, not having too much overhead and making sure that you weren't caught in hot water.
Yeah. The idea is everything changes all the time. It's the question of whether or not you see it and if you can adapt quickly enough to it. Yeah. For whatever reason, that golden age, it was like there were maybe 6 channels that you can watch. I know there was satellite, but there's the main channels and they would spend a lot of money because this is the best way to communicate and reach out to people and grow your business. Agencies used to get the media buy, which is enormous, right? That's the budget that they spend just to buy advertising. I remember reading about this, I think it was the late 90s, that American Express spent $500 million just in media buy alone. So Incredible. If you take 10% of that, you're doing pretty good as an agency. Maybe Absolutely. You take more. But then the business model changes because what happens is brands get really smart and sophisticated. They cherry pick from the agency people they like working with and they bring them inside and they become their chief brand officer. And then they piecemeal everything out. They say, we'll buy the media ourselves. So it just creates downward pressure. Yeah. The agencies I know are going out of business or they have to change their business model. They actually have to make money on production now. Whereas before they could do it at a loss and get the money back in the media buy. So all these things are changing. And so we're kind of arcing out of this free-for-all spending. This is in that time pre-.com bubble meltdown. And there was funny money. I remember there was a comic strip and they would spin somebody around in a chair and the dumb guy in the office would point to something and they would buy that stock and that stock would be shoot up 10, 100 times the value. Dumb money, speculative market. Of course it's going to crash. And certainly it did. So there was the .com bust and that's what happened. And then people start getting smarter and they keep evolving. So what do you have to do? You have to learn how to make the things that you make in a much leaner way. And I remember this is hilarious because for us to do a live action shoot one day would probably cost somewhere between $90,000 to $120,000 just to be on set. Yep. And I thought that was a lot of money. And it was. But then one of my producers say, well, Ridley Scott can't step on the set unless it's $600,000 because he wants all these things. He wants this DP, he wants that art director, and he wants to do it big. And so for them, making commercials was going to be tougher and tougher. And they had a hard time figuring it out. And you take it all the way to the end. So we're talking now like 2018, 2017. What's happening is now we have to learn how to make the same things we used to make for, like you said, a tenth. And it's probably even less than that. And we have to get really smart. And DSLRs are available. It becomes a thing. Technology keeps changing. It pushes. And now you can create a cinematic quality level image with depth of field and the richness of film
for $2,000 instead of $200,000.
A few $1,000. Yeah. At that time, Canon 5D Mark II, I believe, that changed the game. Full-size sensor, beautiful look, and it started to evolve.
I remember it was, I think probably, was it 2009 or 2010? I remember at college, just my friend sent me this video. It was comparing the Red 1, which was the only digital cinema camera at the time. It was like the body itself was $17,500, which I just couldn't possibly imagine owning personally, compared to the 5D Mark II. And I like the 5D Mark II more. I mean, it just blew my mind that suddenly this entire world of cinematic possibilities was unlocked in an instant. So that did change things. Yeah. How did that affect your business? Did you have employees that you had to let go at the time? Was your overhead much bigger than it needed to be? Or were you able to see the future, no pun intended, and evolve and adapt in time?
Yeah, we go through cycles like this all the time, because if you're in a fast moving market, the team that got you here won't get you there. And so we have to go through this, and it's a painful emotional process where I have to say, I love all of you. You're amazing people, but our business is not here anymore. We have to survive. And so I have to cut a third of you. Yeah. And you go through that, and it gets a little easier, but it's still never easy. And you have to let people go and say, you're a good human being. There's nothing wrong with you. I just can't afford to keep you here because our business isn't here anymore. And then you can see this slow trickle of work that's flowing from our reps. And it's like, what's going on? They're like, well, there's no work to be had. We don't know what to do. So the slowdown in production. And I remember back in the day, Powerade. This is late 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. Powerade was like launching. They dropped an S load of money to make a commercial, like a future sports arena, with CG and robots and tunnels and production, because I was involved in it. I was like, holy cow, the kind of money they're spending on this thing. Fast forward today, you don't see many of those epic commercials anymore, because that's not where people's attention are. They're on social media. They're vertical videos.
And the climate's entirely different too, where it's more real, exactly. Where you have a personal element in everything, right? It's like, I always joke that like I'll see a commercial and it's like lens flare is anamorphic, 2:4:1, and it's like a dad and a daughter on a train, and it's all emotional. And I'm like, what is this even for? And at the end, it says like something like Sharpie, make it last, or something. You know what I mean? It has nothing to do with what I'm seeing, but it's just like once you evolve and make things more emotional or connect them to personal people or their lives, then they just respond differently to it. And that's what you see, I think, a lot with YouTube and Instagram and a lot of marketing moving towards those platforms, because people feel like they're buddies with some of these people, and there's a human element to everything.
They're real people.
They're real.
And you trust them.
They are real people. Right? Yeah, exactly. Right.
So agencies are going to give some young influencer $30,000, say, here's the Sharpie. We just need to end on this line, make it last. They'll do something outrageous, funny, cool, and it'll be consistent with their voice and their tone. And if they have a couple of million followers, that's the eyeballs that they want. Yeah.
And what a great deal for that company, for Sharpie. A couple million followers, so that's how many impressions, 2 million impressions on this Sharpie thing, that they already have come to this person and they've volunteered their follow. They already are interested in what they're doing.
That's right.
So have you been able to capitalize on some of this market? Are you on social media? Are you talking about social media with some of your marketing?
Yes, I am on social media, and I'm not an influencer, but I'm not a micro influencer. That there's a technical term, like if you have about 20,000 followers, you're a micro influencer. And if you have like 1 million followers, then you're an influencer. I'm in the middle. And so I have recently done 2 sizable deals based on my social media following. I can't tell the name of the company, but it's for $120,000 to post 3 things on my account.
Incredible. And you've got about 550,000 followers, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's incredible money. And I think that's, it's really amazing. Good for you. So talk to me, when did you start the Futur?
Okay. The Futur was in its original form, a company called The School, and had a business partner. His name was Jose Caballé. And we were working together to make YouTube videos because we wanted to launch an education product. And we were doing that for a while. And Jose and I split in 2016, differences in management and style and pace and all that kind of stuff, vision. And then that was when the Futur was started. But it was originally in 2014. So in 2016, I don't have a partner anymore. I'm going to do what I want. The company starts to grow, and it grows really fast because now I don't have to make compromises. I don't have to have a meeting about anything. We just do it. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, we adjust, and we adjust really fast. I like running without a plan. I don't advise people to do this, but I like running without a plan. I like to run with a direction. I know, generally speaking, it's north, northeast, but I don't need to know every side route and every pit stop. I don't need a resupply station. I'm just going to go.
My direction is generally down. I'm like the kind of jump out of the airplane and assemble a parachute on the way down kind of person. So it's a little bit different. I think I like your method more. I might have to change things up a little bit, but sorry, go ahead.
Less impact on you if you don't get it right, by the way, the metaphor. Yeah. So we started doing this thing, and then we're growing our company 300% year over year, which is crazy, right? And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I think the Futur as an education company is going to exceed Blind as a service design company, especially because we're still trying to figure out what does the market want from us, right? We've moved from working with agencies to doing client direct. We moved away from motion design to doing brand strategy. And so now we have this other opportunity. So in December of 2018, one of my creative directors says to me, why do we keep doing commercial client work when we could just work on content? And if we can just commit to making the business model work, we'd never have to take another client on. And at first I was really challenged and bothered by that statement, but I gave it like a few minutes. And I'm like, okay, you're right. Let's go for this thing. We decided in December of 2018, we're not going to do client work anymore. Guess what happens in January? One of our biggest clients calls and says, we have this amazing video we want you to make. It's $400,000. We're looking at each other like, okay, what do we do? In theory, it was a good idea to walk away from this work. It's one of our biggest and best clients. It's a super cool project we all love. What are we going to do? And we said no. And I thought saying no would hurt me a lot more emotionally. Financially, it's going to hurt me for sure. But emotionally, I thought, maybe we just do this like one last time. But no, we just said no. We committed to it, and we've never looked back. So we haven't done client work since December 2018.
Wow, incredible. So is Blind then merging with the Futur at all, or is there a very distinct separation between the two?
There is a very clear distinction because nobody works for Blind anymore. Everybody is on the Futur's payroll. We don't do client work anymore. We hold Blind as an entity because I'm not sure what I want to do with it yet. But we keep Blind around because a lot of people on YouTube and social media, they've never done anything with their lives, right? So when you start to poke behind the curtain, you're like, oh, you're selling me the thing that you want to sell me. That's how you're going to get rich, right? Well, we actually have a rich history of doing work for 20 plus years, and some really hard jobs, some really amazing jobs. Well, it's there. And so we use it now as proof positive. Like, it wasn't from nothing. I didn't just pop up online one day and decide like, I'm going to teach people how to make stuff.
So you've taken this creative group of people and you've brought them over to the Futur, and that we've got creative directors, we've got graphic designers, and you're building an educational network, which I know about only because my dad, who's a graphic designer and letterform artist, has a couple of videos on your platform. Yep. Talk to me about how it started and how it's evolving, because I think, from what I can gather when I go there, it feels very design centric, with undertones in business and for creatives. But what's the idea? What's the plan for the Futur?
Yeah. And your observation is spot on. We're a company with a personality disorder, and I'm not going to hide from it. Yeah. We're not always sure what the heck we are, right? At the end of the day, you can say we're an education company. That works, but it's pretty broad and generic, and that's not going to help anybody. my background is in design, in production, motion graphics, animation, visual effects, but I'm not that interested in building a company around the things that I used to do because those things change all the time.
Sure.
I find that there's a gap in the market between a creative person and a business owner in the creative space. And so you can go to school, and there's lots of really fine schools out there that will teach you the art and craft of making a film, doing audio productions, whatever. There's great schools for all this stuff, to do compositions, to do anything. But generally speaking, that's as far as they're going to take you. So you'll be an amazing craft person. You can be an artist or an artiste or whatever, artisan, but you are going to struggle with the rest of it, which is about marketing, negotiations, overcoming sales objections, all that kind of stuff, running a company, scaling a company. So that's where we're happiest, is when we can talk about the intersection between business and commerce and art and design. And that's where we live. So yes, we need to give people tools first, like logo design, letter form design, etc. But we're going to quickly pivot over here because it's pretty wide open over here. And rather than compete in the red ocean, I would rather be here in the blue ocean.
Mm-hmm. And it's universal, right? So I think design is not universal. Not everybody wants to be a designer necessarily,
right?
But everybody wants to make more money. Everybody wants to have those tools to know how to communicate with clients, to have a better business mindset, to generate more income, whether you're a chemist, right, or a graphic designer. And I think that's what's, for me, the most fascinating part about the future is those courses. And that's what piqued my interest, actually, personally. So what's the plan? How are you going to teach 1 billion people? Coming back to the beginning here.
Yeah, so we have to prove the business model first.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who are doing things that look like what we do and are much more successful by a factor of 3 or 4x. What they are is they teach one course, and it's very meta. It's usually a webinar on how to run webinars, or it's a teacher teaching you how to teach and sell teaching courses. And it's like, oh, it's a little weird. Okay. Mm-hmm. They're all marketing courses essentially, and they're doing really well. And that is a lifestyle business. You will live really well, and you have to work very few hours, and it's a dream for most creative people. But if you have this big mission to change education and you want to be able to create the blueprint, well, it's a lot different, because right now what we're doing is we're building a curriculum. Like say if you want to become a full-fledged graphic designer, what kinds of courses do we have to create so that it'll flow from one to the next? And our idea is that in 4 years, when we're done, you can sit there and you can say, I'll go to a private art school, or I'll go to the future and spend 1/10 or 1/50th of the money and get a comparable education. I'm not going to compromise. It's either this or this, and you want a different experience. That's all. Once we're able to build this where the students feel like they get great value, the teachers get paid, they have intellectual property that they own forever, and collect a royalty every single time we sell a course. They don't have to do anything else but create the original course. We'll handle the rest. Then I know that that's the blueprint or the operating system that then can scale. Now you can take that same blueprint and say, well, we'll get into accounting, we'll get into business management. And now you just follow the formula and it will work. So right now we're just working on the formula, proving the business model first. We're not there yet. We've got a ways to go.
How successful are you so far?
We've done 2 years now where we've done north of $3 million, but I'm not looking at that as successful. This year, we're trying to get to $5 million in revenue, and then 10, and then 15 or something like that. Maybe bigger jumps. I'm not sure. But once we get into double-digit millions of dollars in revenue, I feel like we have more resources that we can then have people who are in education design, teachers, producers, writers, and art directors, everybody working on this full time, so that we're constantly in a state of developing courses, producing the courses, or marketing the courses. And it's just going year round in a smooth cycle. In order to do that, we can take investment money, or I can just spend all of my money, or I can just do a little bit at a time. So it's a combination of all those 3 things, except for investment money.
What advice, one piece of advice do you have for young creatives starting out? And not, let's say they've been to school, they're just looking for work now. What one piece of advice do you have for them on how to get work and how to generate income?
Make content. That's the bottom line. Make content. because you can be the world's most talented person and be dead broke if no one knows you. So people hire who they know, like, and trust. And so before they can trust you, before they can like you, they need to know you first. And the best way I know how, even if you're in school, even if you're in high school right now, start working on the thing that you think you want to be known for, the one thing. And you can change your mind. Totally okay. That's fine. People change their mind all the time. But you're getting into the practice of expressing and articulating your thinking in a visual form. This could be on TikTok. It could be on Instagram. It could be on YouTube. You can write a Medium post. Whatever floats your boat. The best way that you know how to communicate to the world, just do that and get into the practice of that. One, you'll grow an audience that might turn into a community of fans. But more importantly, you get to learn about who you are. Like back when I was in school in junior high, they would say, keep a journal, keep a journal. It's really important to keep a journal. And guess what? I did not keep a journal. And now I understand the importance of keeping a journal, which is you discover what you know by articulating that to others. Yeah. That's why it's so important.
Wonderful. Well, Chris, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be here. So thank you again. Is there anything else you want to say before we sign off?
No, I appreciate the conversation. It was really fun. Yeah, thank you.
Where can people find out more about the Futur?
Okay,
or you?
The easiest way to find out about the Futur is go to thefutur.com. The Futur has no E in it, and people always wonder, like, where did the E go? I said, we just dropped it. We dropped the ego, man. That's it. So it's Futur.
We dropped the ego.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't catch that. That's hysterical. No, we're the ego. No, you don't have it.
Yeah, we don't have any ego. It's gone. So it's the Futur, the Futur. You can also find me everywhere on social media. I'm at the Chris Do. Last name is D-O. So the Chris Do. It's a 2-letter last name.
Perfect. Well, I can't wait to see more what comes out for you guys. So
thank you very much.
Thank you again for being here.
My pleasure.